Hi guys, so the topic for today is the 5 stages, or at least my 5 stages of spiritual awakening and how to deal with them. And I really want to go into a little bit of detail as to, for those of you who may be at different points of this stage, offer some advice and guidance and give a little bit of understanding of what might be happening to you and some of the things that you can deal with during this process. This video is going to be a little bit of an overview, and what I'm going to probably do with this is take this into a series and focus on each stage of this process. So we'll have the one overview video, one then for each of the different 5 stages, and talk about different effects, etc., and then maybe have a summary video at the end. So this is going to be the start of a 6-part or 7-part series on this channel. So today I want to give a little bit of an overview of my different experiences, adding some context to what's happened to me personally, and just give a bit of advice, a bit of guidance, and basically go from there. My name is Jared Walters. My website is www.spiritualworlds.co.uk. I am also a paranormal investigator and a webmaster for a good friend of mine's website, which is www.paranormalnow.co.uk. If you're interested in the paranormal and live in South Wales area, or any area really, there's a great deal of content on both those websites that you will find very, very useful indeed. So the first stage I want to talk about is what I've covered this before on this channel, is the fireworks effect, or what I'm calling the fireworks effect. And in order to give a bit of context to this, is that what people tend to forget about the awakening process is that it is deeply personal. If you're awakening geopolitically, if you're awakening psychically, if you're awakening in other aspects of your life, it could be to do with animals or pets, it could be to do with nutrition. There's always like a linchpin, and there's always like a series of inciting incidents that start this awakening process. And I like to call this the fireworks effect, because it's almost like as you're going through this time, you are having all manner of different strange experiences, or you're having challenging experiences which are challenging your social norms. Now, I'll give you an example of how this works on a spiritual level, and I'll give you an example of how this works on a physical level, because what I tend to find is the spiritual and physical are intrinsically linked. Now, the skeptics amongst you will say, well, obviously you're just applying spiritual concepts to physical phenomena, which in many senses is true, but from the context of what I'm talking about here, your spiritual, or your what I'm referring to as spiritual is your consciousness. So the ways to kind of unlock your consciousness. So essentially, to start the fireworks effect, you have an inciting incident. So like any story, when you're writing like a story, a script, a book, a novel, you always have like an inciting incident. You have the bit before the credits then on a TV show that kind of set up what this experience is going to be and how this experience is going to play out for you. Sometimes it can be the passing of a loved one. It could be your treat where you've been treated in a certain job. It could be it can be a whole manner of different things. It can be something very as simple as meeting a person and just feeling a sensation of connection with that person that you maybe not felt before. It could be meeting a love interest, and that love interest then sort of provokes your thinking, challenges your consciousness, challenges your social norms, and challenges your point of view. Because what is really happening here, whether it's physical, it's challenging the mind or challenging the body or spirit, it's basically challenging your point of perspective. It's challenging the point of view of which you look at things. And when you go through this side of it, you start to realize certain truths. And what I say by certain truths is that the things that you held to be true no longer ring true with you. Notice what I'm talking about here is personal truths. They are truths of which groups of people will form a consensus around. But I'm talking, and these may be one and the same. But what I'm talking about here and want to focus on is your personal truth. So I'll give an idea of a spiritual way of this. For me, it was very much to do with the passing of my brother Jonathan, and although I had psychic experiences leading up to around about 2008 2009, it wasn't until I kind of went through a period of like a downturn period when I started to look into the spiritual aspects of things that I started to have these experiences, and it was almost I had several instances or several experiences which I have gone into in more deep detail. Check out the Torchbearer video that I've done on this channel. It'll be in the same playlist as this video. But also check out the Pathways to Healing video I did on giving the background to the relationship between myself and Jonathan and how he's influenced my life with just more insight. So for me, that was the major thing. But I started to have some experiences I couldn't possibly explain, and what I was looking for was a point of reference. And this for me has been my catalyst. It's been my way of it's been my way in. It's been the way the door opened for me. The major Kickstarter, though there was a huge Kickstarter in 2008 2009, and that was with meeting with certain people, having these experiences, having different things that would come in dreams, and they would start to come true for me. All these different things that were going on that were really freaking me out at the time. That was the start for me there, getting to a certain level. And it wasn't until 2012 to 2013 where this culminated in we had a paranormal infestation in the house, and there was so much information given to me during that time where our house was I don't even want to say it was like a haunting, because it wasn't really like a haunting. I've dealt with many house clearances and stuff before, but it wasn't really a haunting per se. It was more to do with there was very, very strange experiences that were happening around my house, and again you can see these on this channel. It's the demonic connection videos, which are very, very early on, so go back to 2013. It's on the paranormal playlist. If you go back about 30 videos on the paranormal playlist, you'll see them as well. An example of the physical aspects of this is when I was working for an organisation specialising in regeneration of my local area, and the amount of different influences and the way in which these forces work within our structure of society, and the influence that corruption had in the final end game to, and this is the media, this is the government, this is banks, etc. And I'm not talking about going into very, very deep geopolitically here, but it was my first insight because I could see how certain areas of corruption were affecting the project of which we were undertaking, and how very much the systemically we are seeing that there is a general force within the sort of powers that be, within the social hierarchies, that prevents things from changing, and very much so because of the amount of corruption that is infested within these institutions. And a lot of people are seeing this now in the social in society, where we're very much seeing a breakdown in and a coming to the surface of these truths. Because one thing I will say is the personal awakening and the awakening of the masses is very much the same thing, but one works on a quicker scale. A personal awakening will work on a faster scale than a awakening of us globally, because of the way it happens and because of the fact that it's been happening in stages. You had your kind of forebearers in the 1990s, and you had a huge surge of people that started to awaken around about the 2001 to 2008. 9/11 was a massive catalyst for this, and especially around about the financial crash of 2008 as well. So you have these massive things that are happening, these huge jumps, these huge catastrophes that are happening in society that force this awakening, that force this change of perspective for a lot of people. And it's when they really start to explore and try and add a bit of context, because these events have an effect on us. You know, the provisions that have been put in place since 9/11, for example, the many wars that have happened that have been basically can be taken back to that point, and you start looking into things like the Project for the New American Century, and how much of that information that was written in 2000 has come out now and has happened has played out within the play out world. And you can start to see how much the idea of the awakening is to see how this old construct, this old programming within ourselves, and because it's within us, it's also within our society, because we make up our society. Big newsflash there, people. Is starting to emerge. You're seeing now the breakdown in certain things, like the revelations about a VIP historic and I would dare say current child sex abuse, the abuse of the media, how the mainstream media at the moment is pushing to talk about fake news, and which is something that is basically goes against what is taught in academia to low level media studies students. You know, it is these basic things, but you're also seeing the change in society as well, and you're seeing it historically, because the context to all this, for people opening up more to the spiritual, seeing more the way our seeing through the veil of our society and how our society is structured, and seeing the breakdown of that, and match that against the context of how people are opening up to things like the paranormal. Look at the X-Files generation of the 1990s, and though even if you're skeptical for some of these areas, you're still very intrigued about them. A lot of skeptical people might not subscribe to the same explanations of those who maybe consider themselves believers. I personally think that the whole argument between skeptics and believers is redundant and a distraction as far as I'm concerned. But if you look just to use those labels for a second, just to entertain those labels, if you're using those, if you're trying to if you're coming at it from a skeptical or a believer sort of point of view, there's still that kind of interest in it to a point, and whether that comes from the realms of again, it can come from a rich tapestry, it can come from the realms of actually looking at cases, or it can come from the realms of fiction expressing or a consumption of different types of fiction that are out there at the moment, and it's very much just an opening and an opening of our minds to the different possibilities, and that's where this is going. But I'll talk more about the fireworks effect in greater detail in the next video in this series. I want to keep this time short on this because I've already been talking for a couple of minutes on this. But the next stage then is the breakdown, because when you start having these experiences, you start to find that friends will start drifting away from you. You find that your old interests may not seem as interesting. You might find things come up and really start to challenge your point of view, and you really start to find that there's a breakdown happening. And I've covered this breakdown really there's not a great deal more that I can say about the breakdown on than I've already said. Really about, you know, what we're seeing in society and how that's affecting us, how that's affecting people, and the way of sort of that's affecting how we're interacting with people, how we're seeing the world, and it's creating what I find it does create some arguments, and it does create a lot of anxiety. What you kind of see next is the withdrawal, or the hermit stage, because what I tend to find is once you've kind of gone through that breakdown, you're really starting to go within, and you're starting to see what's happening within. You start to see that these changes and these shifts, that it basically all starts with you, and you tend to find that you will have a lot of inspiration, a lot of ideas come in this phase of the awakening process, but nothing really seems to work. Nothing really seems to sort of break free of it, and you tend to find sometimes you can feel very, very lazy. You don't really want to interact with people, but what you're doing is you're doing a lot of self-work, you're doing a lot of self-healing, you're doing a lot of you're looking within yourself, and there's a lot of that challenge, and you're trying to seek understanding. And again, I will talk a little bit more of that in due course. But this is the sort of phase that I've been in, and what this builds to is that you find there's a lot of stagnation that happens around you, that you feel as if there's definitely things that you need to be doing, there's definitely things that you want to do, but nothing just really seems to work, and that in itself can be very much a breakdown, or part of the breakdown process. But you really, really feel that you have to do this inner work, and lots of new inspirations to come in, especially things that are very, very challenging. And what I tend to find is when I have this new information come, I might find it on a talk on YouTube, I might receive it through a dream, I might receive it psychically, it might be through it could be through a lot of different stimuli, but you'll always find that you'll have validation. The way validation would happen for me is I'd see something on a talk, or I'd be drawn to something, or I would have that sort of psychic inspiration, and then I would be then something would happen. For me, it was doing the paranormal investigations. When I would be talking to people who contacted me for a case or contacted me for a reading, they would be going through something that validated that information had come my way, without any further prompting. It would just come, and it would knock me off my feet a lot of the time, because I'd find it truly amazing that all these different people could be going through the very same thing, and to a point where it actually really starts to permeate through the conventional view of our society. Even the Huffington Post has run articles on this, on the awakening process, that something is changing in our society, that is very fundamental. It has the opportunity to become very fundamental into the way that we live our lives moving forward. And we very much, when we go through that stage on a society level, you very much feel like you're on a tipping point, because there's very much a struggle then for power, because the power, as people are starting to realise and understand their own personal power, they start to take it back, and then obviously the ones that have that power, i.e. the governments or the corporations, or the various institutions and entities within society, will very much hold on, or try and hold on to that. And this is where it will intrinsically fail, because you don't know, on a global scale, you don't know who's going to awaken next and where that person's going to be. The biggest example of that, which I thought very much turned the tide, was the recent Standing Rock protests in America. And if any of you have take a look at some of the videos, take a look at some of the videos of those protests and some of the tactics of which the American military police did to try and move those protesters. The Standing Rock protesters were protesting against a pipeline that was going to be going through their reservation. It was Native Americans, and the pipeline was going to be carrying very toxic chemicals through their sacred lands, and they basically stood up and said, no, we're not having it. And they were put under extreme pressure by the authorities, and you generally found it was around about the end of I say last November to December 2016. I can't remember the precise date off the top of my head, but it was a very strange and very rewarding sort of timeline of events, because they had all this pressure, and then you had something around about 1,400 ex-servicemen, so ex-veterans, that were going to come and going to be bussed into the area, and were going to stand as a human shield to protect the protesters. Once the authorities saw this was going to happen, they had no choice but to back down. And this is the interesting thing, because when you're at the initial stages of this awakening, all you can see through the breakdown process is anarchy. As if, if this is the way this world is structured at the moment, which is, let's be honest, is not in a good way. And that's putting it very mildly. You can't see the forest through the trees, and I think this is where this awakening process is going to come in. And there are going to be times where it's going to get it's going to get very, very tough. It's going to get very, very tough. But at the end of the day, the way things are right now is very tough anyway. And I feel that as it goes through, the global consciousness will follow this same pattern. So then it leads you to the fourth stage, is letting go and understanding, because this is where you really start to through the breakdown process and the research process, I guess, then that comes with the last two stages. People will talk about things like if you come in from a spiritual aspect of it, and I'm talking more about the spiritual side, because this is where this is where I'm coming from. This is my personal journey. For others it will be different, but for me it is an awakening of consciousness, and to me those two words are the same. But for me, what you'll find is you get to a stage where just enough is enough, and you have to start letting go of the worry. You start to let go of the stress. And for those of us that sort of went through that huge shift in 2012, 2016 was the most powerful year for that, where you started to understand that it's our thoughts that create our reality. Because you think of it this way, there's nothing man-made on earth that wasn't imagined first. And there's a very real science to this, and I've explained this before in some of the other videos. But our thoughts create neural pathways within our brains, and therefore when we are confronted with certain situations, those neural pathways, the neurons that are firing off, will find the path of least resistance. And to change that, you've almost got to write new pathways. It is a physical reprogramming that goes on from I'm not good enough, I can't do it, nothing very good happens to me, to yes, I can do it. So it's a physical reprogramming from no, I can't to yes, I can. And worrying is very much a manifestation of the no, I can't, because what we are doing is we're creating a reality, and we're creating that in our mind, which is affecting our body, that we don't enjoy, and our brain doesn't really know the difference between what is something that's physically happening and something that is happening within inside our minds. We'll still have reactions to it. We can have physical reactions to it. We can stress ourselves out just by thinking about something that stresses ourselves out, if we just let it get that way. So we start to really break out of the old norms and really start, and this is it's terrifying. It's very, very terrifying, because what you're really doing is you're learning self-mastery. You're understanding self-mastery. But as you're doing that, you're becoming much more open and much more sensitive and much more aware to the different energies that are coming in. I've talked about this I'll just look at the energy update videos that I've posted on this channel. You're understanding that the world around you, but you're also feeling the pain of those around you as well. And for me, working as a medium, and that's one of the things I do is work as a medium and give readings, etc. But when I work psychically, I form a link with people. I form, you feel it. It's like a physical. You feel the link, because it's like a touch, I suppose. Obviously, it doesn't feel like a touch physically, but it's like when you put your hand on something, you kind of making a link, a physical link. When you do it with mediumship, you're making a spiritual link. But that link, just as I can grab hold of the desk in front of me here and just feel it and grasp the wood, when I make a psychic link with someone, or a spiritual link with a spirit, or a guide, or whichever sort of whatever I make the link with, there's always there's depth to it, because information will start flowing. There'll be communication coming through, yeah. So, and there'll be understanding coming through. So, but with this phase last year, there was the energy and the sensation, but when you tried to make the physical link, when you tried to push your energy out and actually make that link and anchor yourself to that, to actually understand what was going on, a bit like opening your eyes, it's like it was almost like being blind, because there was no substance there's no depth. So it's like it was like opening your eyes and just seeing one colour, and seeing nothing. Your eyes are open, but there's nothing there to see. And that was very, very strange. It's a very strange sensation, but you get to that point of understanding that you need to let go. You need to let go, because you need to let go of the worry. You need to let go of all those different toxic things that are happening within your mind. And when you're letting go, you're not letting go of the responsibility for what I have to deal with. It's like the grieving process. At some point during the grieving process, you have to let go of the negative emotions that you're feeling, because it will destroy you. And that's what happens when people go through really advanced stages of grief. They let that destroy them, because they confuse letting go of the worry and letting go of the guilt and letting go of the negative emotions, rather than seeking to understand them and seeking to find context to them and look at them from the point of view of where they were at that point in time when the things happened, and not look at them retrospectively, bringing their mind and consciousness into the now moment, then I suppose, bringing it into the present, being present with it. And actually, you don't know something until you feel it. So you can know it, you can understand it, but then you've got to really bring that into the sensation of feeling it. You've got to make that link from within yourself of letting go. And that's when the understanding comes from. And as part, I feel that's the fourth stage for me. Then the fifth stage is the return. So after you've come away, you've had the breakdown, you've had all these different things, you've had this fundamental change. And I don't think this fifth stage is a final stage. This will keep on going. You don't get to a point and think, well, I'm enlightened now, thank you very much, that was fun, I'm just going to carry on and do what I wanted to do. This is my experience, but your experience may follow the same 5 stages, but manifest completely differently. You might have no aspect of the spiritual side of it. You might have more of an exploration through a connection with animals, for example, or a connection with social groups, or social, or just needing to change things within your social environment, or within the country or place in which you live, or just within your community. There are many ways in which this manifests itself, but it will always come back to you. It will always come back to you, because you don't know what another person's feeling. You can surmise it, you can make a best guess, but it is very difficult to feel it unless that person agrees and you're both in tune enough to make that psychic connection. I did that with Sam once. I've only ever done it with Sam and I. We always have that. We're always aware of each other's feelings. It's like having a. It's like having the computer turned on when you're playing on the computer. The computer's there, and it's making that hum in the background. And it's only until maybe something crops up that you actually have to become aware of it to the point of interacting with it. And there was one point that that again, when you have that bond, a physical bond, relationship bond with someone, that love is always there. And I make a point of being grateful for it and expressing it every single day. But that, by the by, went off on a little bit of a tangent. The next stage is that kind of learning and understanding, and once you get to the point of letting go, you can then let yourself really get to know yourself and really get to that point where you're bringing in that self-love, you're bringing in that self-acceptance, you're bringing in that self-healing throughout those 4 prior stages. And now when you hit the 5th stage, it is your time then to go back into the world and start bringing in that knowledge and that information and bringing it in and really interacting with the world around you. And the reason why that's so scary is because you find certain people might not have moved forward. You still have maybe some of those old hang-ups to a point, but you just almost got to fake it till you make it. And you've got to really sort of just let go of all those worries from the past and just do it. You literally just do it. And I remember, when I going back to my early 20s, I was very, very shy, especially when it came to the opposite sex. I found it very, very hard when interacting with relationships, and I'd be around friends that, very much ladies' men, or these sorts of things. It was certain friends I had. Obviously, I had male and female friends, but whenever it came to sort of more the romantic element of it, that was it. I just, died a little inside, And I say to those friends of mine who are, more apt in that sort of area of life than I suppose, is how do you do it? And it gets to that point where that person would always turn around to me and say, you just do. You just suck it up and do it. And eventually you'll make mistakes and you'll fall flat in your face and you just carry on going. You just do it and do it and do it and do it. And eventually it becomes second nature. You wonder what the hell you were worrying about. And this is how it works with all of it. Once you've understand that and you've let go that, if you do something wrong, it's okay to make a mistake. You're gonna fuck it up now and again. That's fine, and just love yourself for it, laugh at it, and just bring that sort of high vibration energy into it, and start really sort of understanding that, it is okay. To make mistakes is actually beneficial to make mistakes, and you will stumble as you start enacting on these ideas you may have had back in the previous stages of this awakening process. But you'll find, because you're letting go of the outcome, the biggest thing that you need to let go of when you start coming back into the fold, not coming back into the fold, this is the difference, where you're bringing that knowledge and that energy that you've gone through this process into society. So you're not just, being vibrated back into society. You're just approaching those around you. You're planting seeds. You're understanding that everyone has their own journey, but they don't have to necessarily go through the same journey as you did. But you understand that when someone does say something really bad about you, it's not a reflection about you, it's a reflection of them, unless they do it constructively and talk to you about it and, have a civil conversation about it. If someone wants to ridicule you, it's not a statement of you, it's a statement of them. How can it be a statement of you when they don't know exactly what you're feeling? They're just picking it out from what you're doing is you're challenging their social norms, you're challenging their view of the world, and they might not like it. They may have several facts to back it up, etc., and you might have several facts to back up. You were point of view of what you're doing, but their point of attention is different to you, and it's just symbolic of their point of attention and holds absolutely no bearing on what you're doing. Essentially, as long as you follow the laws of don't hurt anyone or harm anyone or take something that isn't yours, then I think you can't really go far wrong. And so you might stumble and you might fall, but then you just generally have to get to that point where you let go and you start enacting those things that you want to do. You start, and this stage, this stage does start to happen because you get to a point where after you go through the breakdown process and the withdrawal, at some point life will just find a way to make you go back and start really going out into the world and bringing in new things and bringing in these new fresh ideas, and but you're doing it standing on your own 2 feet. You're doing it by creating something new for yourself and something new that has positive change on those around you. Because when you've done that and when you've understood those energies and when you've done the work inside, you start to have just a positive impact on people just by being you, because you might look at things in a different way, which for the 1 or 2 people that might ridicule you for it, you might inspire 10 other people that just literally change something within their lives and sparks that journey. It's a ripple effect, folks. This is the way the awakening works. It's a ripple effect, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way. So that's the 5 stages. I'm going to talk about these in a little bit more detail in videos to come. So thank you very much for watching or listening to this video. My name is Jared Walters. My website again is www.spiritualworlds.co.uk. I do a lot of development work on that. If you want to be part of my development groups, then take a look at that area of the website, and I will be developing some downloadable meditations that will be able to help you with this process as well. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today. I am trying to upload much more frequently on this channel now, so if there's anything that you would like me to talk about, if there's anything about what I'm working on this channel is basically mind, body and spirit. So I'll talk about a lot of spiritual concepts, might talk some geopolitics and stuff that's happening in the news, and there's going to be some paranormal elements to this channel as well. So essentially within this sort of spectrum, if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll be very happy to address some of your questions. Thank you very, very much, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.